Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of Kaleidoscope, the new Differing Minds podcast full of raw, powerful stories about race, neurodiversity, and intersectionality. I'm Jess, CEO of Differing Minds and host of the Kaleidoscope podcast. My pronouns are she, her. And as a white cis woman, I want to use the privilege I have to raise the voices of others and enable us all to learn from them by hearing their stories. This started for me back in, didn't start for me, but this really accelerated for me back in May when I hosted a webinar on a similar topic. And it was so powerful. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive, and there were so many call outs for more stories. So, hence Kaleidoscope. And today I'm so excited to welcome Keisha Adair Swaby for an episode about her journey from having no GCSEs to achieving a master's. Keisha is a mother of four. So much to say about you, Keisha. Keisha is a mother of four, inspirational speaker, radio presenter, author, film and television supporting artist, to name but a few. She is a Goodwill Ambassador for the Jamaica Dyslexia Association and a regular speaker at events for International Women's Day and at the annual Dyslexia Show held at the NEC in Birmingham. Keisha launched Empowering Dyslexics to inspire and be an example to others so that they too can achieve anything. Her motto is, "If I can do it, so can you," which I love. Keisha has been chosen as one of the top 50 most influential neurodivergent women and was a finalist for Role Model of the Year at the Multicultural Business and Community Champion Awards. She's listed on the Northern Power Women Awards Future List 2023 and is one of the We Are the City Rising Star finalists. She's on a mission to empower others with her story of inspiration and determination. And you can read more of her story in her best-selling book, Empowering Dyslexics, Blessed and Gifted. Keisha, thank you so much for coming today. I am so excited to talk to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Jess. What can I say after that introduction? Is that me? I'm blushing here.
Look at all those things you've done and you've barely got started.
No.
So it would be great to start by hearing from you a little bit more about your identity, your neurodivergence, and I guess your story.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm Keisha, as Jess has just introduced me. I'm based in Manchester here in the UK. And my story started a very long time ago, back in Jamaica, growing up and leaving Jamaica at the age of 14, coming to the UK. And when I came to the UK, everything was so different to me. I didn't know certain things like, the weather, the food, different food. Didn't know half the food, what it was. I was eating it, but I didn't know what it was. But after time, all the time I was going through, and started school. I came to June and started school September. So when I started school in September, it was a whole different world. New people, different subjects in the classroom, different things that we're studying, and I just didn't understand any of it. So I went through school, cut a long story short, I went through school and came out with no GCSE whatsoever, absolutely nothing. So yeah, that's just the start of the story, but I know that Jess has got more questions. I'm going to give you a chance to just ask more if you wanted to. So that's the start of it, really.
And so what happened after school? So when did your kind of neurodivergence appear for you? Obviously, it's always been there, but at what point did you start to understand it?
It was there, and I just didn't know what it was because I've always heard the word things like dyslexia thrown around, but it wasn't anything that I associated with myself. I knew that I had things going on, the way that I did things, the speed at which I did things, and the way I learn as well, my processing, my memory. There's a lot of stuff that was going on at the time, but I didn't know because growing up in Jamaica, there was no mention, no one knew what dyslexia or any learning differences were. So I was just going along with life just as it is. But when I left school, I was determined to achieve my English GCSE because I really love writing. I love the English language. And that's what I did. I left school and then I thought, this is the goal that I'm going to do now. And I did it, achieved my GCSE in Manchester. And all through that time, I was still struggling, went into the corporate world, still struggling, didn't know what was happening at all. I was going through so much in the corporate world where developed, and there was anxiety, there was depression. There was so much in the space of time where I spent 17 years in the corporate world, and quite a lot of it I've spent in frustration, feeling not good enough, because I look around in the office and see people getting through certain tasks so quickly, and I'm there struggling, or I'm taking days, or procrastinating with my tasks, or not getting it right, getting things wrong all the time. So all of this was going on, and it came to a breaking point really in 2016 when I decided that, because I've always had a dream of achieving my degree, but I just didn't have the opportunity to then, because I didn't have the support and all that was going on at the time. And I did it. So I gave up the job 2016 and thought, I'm going to do my degree now. So I had to start from the bottom, which is a foundation degree, because I had no GCSEs. And I was going along, passed through that, came through the foundation degree with flying colours. And the next progression route was to go now to the full degree. That's what I did. Went straight in, continued, and came out with a first class honours degree. But however, in the last few weeks of me doing that degree and doing my dissertation, that my life changed. When I say that my life changed, I mean in a massive way, because I made an effort to take my work to the librarian, and she checked it that day, and she said to me, her words was what changed everything. I took the work back, and she said, there's a lot of things that, there's a lot of sort of spelling mistakes, there's a lot of errors in there. And I think I didn't know you had dyslexia, she said to me. And she said, the reason I see it is because I have a brother who's also dyslexic, and the way you write things and the way you comprehend information and that I can see. And I was like, wow, okay. And that moment was like a light beaming through the ceiling coming down at me, because finally that word sort of like meant that it's something that I really need to look into. So because I was leaving, I had to do things very, very quickly. And the university that I was with, they were very, very grateful, very, very helpful. And they got me through the assessment, the 3-hour assessment. And during the end of the assessment, she said to me, I don't know how you got through your studies and, all the things that you do, because you are severely dyslexic and dyspraxic. And wow. And that was it for me. And yeah, that was a start.
I mean, that is amazing. Just, I guess, the luck really of you taking that work to that one person, and then them having their experience that they could then relate to what they were seeing in front of them. And then I think also having the confidence to say to you, because some people may not have said that, or may have been worried about what
Yeah,
the perception would have been. So like so many
yeah,
things came together to allow you to then
yeah,
understand a bit more about yourself. Um,
definitely it
and
did.
and and so so good, like you say, about it being like a beam of light shining down, or a light bulb moment. Because I think sometimes when people think about being diagnosed as neurodivergent, they think it's going to be perceived as this really negative thing, and like, oh, you wouldn't want that label you hear people say all the time. But actually, in
Yeah.
reality, for so many people, as you've just said, it's completely the opposite.
It's totally because just on the simple thing, like for people, I mean, especially I'm going to go into the black community. There's been a lot of shame and stigma attached to learning differences, dyslexia. It's only recently people are really taught having that conversation, and I'm proud to say that they're dyslexic, because of the negativity. No one wanted to own up to it, to say that they had it, because they felt like they were incompetent. They felt like they weren't good enough. They felt like,
Yeah.
society. It's just so much. So my mission has always been to change that narrative, change that negative narrative about it. And you never hear me say learning difficulty. I don't use that difficulty word with it. It's a learning difference, because we all learn things differently, even if we're not neurodiverse. So for me, that is it's so powerful, and also the mission of my children as well. So yeah,
It's so true. That's the phrase I use as well, because it is just a difference. And
yeah,
there is such a common misconception, um, like you said, that you're neurodivergent and therefore you may have like a learning disability, or it impacts your intellect, or it impacts your capability. And in some cases it may do, but it doesn't for everybody. That's not a direct result of you being neurodivergent. So
no,
it's so important for people to realize that. And you are a wonderful example of exactly that, because not only did you go on to do your degree, you then went on to do your master's,
yeah.
and have since written a book. So tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah, so once I got my diagnosis and everything, my life became a lot easier in a massive way, because now I knew what was going on. I weren't wondering what's going on with me. Why am I struggling like this? Why is things the way it is? So for me, it was just, and by then I thought, everyone was kept saying to me after I finished my degree, "Are you going to do the masters?" And I was like, that was the worst question anyone could ask me at that time, when I just finished my degree. But you know what? I never say never in life. And I spoke to my lecturer at the time, and he said to me, "You really should look into going and doing the masters." So I went to MMU, and I've got all the information. But one of the things that I was really keen on is finding out that there's no exams in the masters, any part of it, any
Yeah.
modules. I was told there wasn't, and then lo and behold, when I started, I had to do exams, and everything changed. From we started September, the October we started term, and then by the March everything had gone in. Pandemic had kicked in, the COVID-19 kicked in, and then we had to go everything online. So at that time doing the masters, it was hard, it really was hard. And then I thought, you know what, I need to raise more awareness, and I need to do it on a bigger scale. And I was writing a book, but a different kind of book. So I thought, you know what, now that I've had this diagnosis, and there's a massive need out there for Black women voices, because I couldn't see any much happening. So yeah, I thought, I'm going to write a book. There are a few of us, but there needs to be more. And I'm going to write a book so I can get my story out there on a bigger scale. And that's what I did in lockdown. So it took me that time. I was doing a master's, writing a book at the same time. And yeah, it was really
Being
difficult
a
because I
mum,
was trying to
living a
switch,
life.
yeah, and being a mom, and staying alive as well. And it's a massive switch, because I was trying to write my book, and I had that academia brain on at the time. So when I was writing it, I'm thinking, oh no, that doesn't sound right, because it sounds too academic. So I had to kind of go back to my writing styles and how I sound. And it's a hard switch. Yeah, but I did it though.
Yeah,
I
I
did both.
bet. At the same
Yeah,
time, that is really tricky.
same.
But I mean, well, you've done an incredible job, and you're so right. Like there are more now, I think, kind of Black neurodivergent women who are kind of sharing their stories, but it's still not where it needs to be at all.
Not at all.
And it's I don't know if you kind of know the answer to this question, but do you think it impacted you because you were Black and you'd come over from Jamaica when you were a young child? Obviously, you still had a year or 2 years in school. Do you
Yeah.
think the fact that maybe things weren't working out well for you wasn't necessarily spotted by teachers from a neurodivergent perspective, because maybe they had maybe a bias, or they had put things down to you, some cultural issues or whatever it may have been?
It's a mixture of everything, really, because in the 90s when I was in school, there wasn't any talk. I've never heard the word, I never heard it mentioned anyway, the word dyslexia. And coming from Jamaica, they it was so hard, because they must have presumed that I understood everything that they were saying, because there's another thing to it as well, where there's I grew up in Jamaica, where we have broken English. Our language is English, however, it's broken English. So I had to be, and in the Midlands, the accent is quite strong. So there was that as well. There was that
Mm,
language barrier also. And in the school that I was in, there wasn't a lot. There was only about six of us, Black children. Not, I mean, that I knew of in the school. That was it. Just one family that I know, and that was it.
wow.
So it was difficult, because I was struggling with my own identity, thinking I'm coming from a country where I see everyone looks like me, and then I'm in a new country where everyone. And then I got bullied in school because of the way that I sounded, because my accent, and all of that was going on at the time. So I think it was amalgamation of a lot of things. Coming to a new country, trying to settle in, and considering I only had 2 years to get a grip of everything that they've been teaching for us how many years. I'm coming in fresh. So yeah, and the thing is, coming from Jamaica, they might have just thought, well, yeah, she does understand. She should understand, because it's an English speaking country, but it wasn't. It wasn't that.
Yeah, very different though, exactly as you
Yeah,
say.
really.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, interesting hearing you talk about being kind of one of few Black children in your school. What was that like um, when you went to university? Was it a similar experience?
Yeah, I mean, the first part of university, when I did my degree, the course that I was on had more Black people on that course, and the establishment that I was studying with was very, very diverse in that way. However, when I went on to university to do my masters, it was a case of, I remember walking into the room and they had a massive bout of imposter syndrome, because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what am I doing here, sitting here with all these people? And they had come from, I felt, inferior, because they had come from background of psychology, and I was here studying a psychology course, and there was only another black girl on it, and she was an international student that came over from the Caribbean to study. So, and then she had to go back, so it was just left with me really on the course. So that was difficult as well, because out of the whole cohort, that was just me as a black woman on there, and a mature student as well. So yeah,
Yeah, that I mean, it it would be great if that didn't kind of feature into people's experiences, but obviously it does. And
yeah,
it it's it it compounds all of that other stuff that you mentioned. And obviously, as neurodivergent people, imposter syndrome is a
yeah.
huge thing. And then when you've got like intersectional parts of your identity that just kind of
Yeah,
blow that up into bigger things, it's really
yeah.
hard. So how did you, was there anything that you kind of actively did when you were doing your masters to kind of try and combat that,
Yeah.
or
Well, I've always been an active, helpful person because of the empathy being dyslexic. So from day dot in Jamaica, I was a prefect. I came to the UK as well. I was a prefect again because nobody else would do it in the school that I was in. So I took it upon myself to do it. And then I started my degree. I was the course representative. I was the student ambassador. Went on to do my master's again, and that was a 2-year part-time course. I was a student representative again, and all the way for the 2 years, because I wanted to make changes, and I wanted to kind of feed into the university about how we can kind of get more ethnic minorities in the university and make the change and be that voice for my peers in my class as well. So I'd bring up, things that people may find uncomfortable, but I do go there because I believe in fairness, and I believe in fighting for that cause. So nothing was ever uncomfortable for me. They give me things to take to the board, and I never shy of taking it because it's important to have that voice.
oh, definitely. And we need people like that because they're
Yeah,
really important topics, and I think we need to face
yeah,
into those difficult conversations. And um, it's not the same thing, but when I was the webinar I talked about at the beginning that I hosted back in May, I felt really uncomfortable. Kind of, I had this idea to do it, and then I felt really uncomfortable because I was like, well, I'm a white person. Why should I be like putting myself out there as the person that's going to host these
yeah,
stories? But I wanted to do something, and I thought I'm going to reach out to a few people to see if they want to be guests. And everyone was so kind of like, oh my gosh, thank you for doing this. And then when we did the webinar, everyone was so positive about kind of a white person actually using kind of what they have to try and raise those voices. And I think if we
yeah,
don't, I know it's a very, very different situation that I've just tried to make the same, but my point is we need people to put themselves into uncomfortable situations and talk about uncomfortable topics, and can't just carry on in this society that has all of these issues and all of this inequity and racism. It's just we all have to play a part in doing something about that.
yeah. Allyship is so strong and powerful because if you're staying back and not giving that voice, it becomes part of the problem. If you're not
A hundred
fighting for that
percent.
just cause, you think that it's okay. All the injustice that's going on in the world, if you're not speaking up and using your voice, it's so powerful. I see it all the time on LinkedIn with the allyship that goes on there, and I do think that there is still a long way to go because there's so much more work to be done in the neurodiverse space of representation. And I have to go there with this one because growing up, I didn't know, because I didn't know about dyslexia. And then when I started to learn about dyslexia, the one role model as I had and I saw, I couldn't relate. I
Yeah,
really couldn't relate to him, and it was weird because I'd never saw anyone when I came to the UK. I'm just writing an article at the moment, and I was thinking about it, and then saying when I came to the UK, there's only few faces that I saw on television that looked like me. There was, I can name them out. There was Fluella Benjamin. There's Moira Stewart that used to do News at 10. Sir Trevor McDonald, Lenny Henry, Andy Peters. Those were the guys
oh
that I
yeah,
saw
so
growing up,
true.
and that was it. That was it, really. So going back there, to dyslexia, there was no representation in that area in that capacity to see for someone who's in the limelight or in the public figure. There is
Yeah,
now, not still not enough, because only person that I know right now that Steve McQueen, still again, he's a man. His story and
yeah,
his experience are very different from myself because he was born in the UK. I'm from Jamaica. I'm a woman. It's so different. The experience is so different.
it
So
is.
the representation is key, and what we need is representation from people who just ordinary people doing the things. Because if you can't see it, you can't be it, and that is such a big thing. Because our children growing up now, they need to be seeing those positive role models that are representing the greatness of being dyslexic. If they're not seeing that, they're always going to have that doubt and thinking, I'm not good enough. This is a label that I don't want because it's so negative. So it's so important that we're trying to change the narrative and make it become the norm, because understanding.
Oh, I totally agree. And, you know, like you touched on, like intersectionality is so important. So it's not just like, oh, here's a black person I can look up to and see myself represented here, or here's a dyslexic person I can see it, here's someone who came over from Jamaica. Like you're still not going to see yourself represented unless you're hearing from someone who kind of has the same intersectional identity that you do. And even in that case,
Definitely.
people are going to have different experiences. But we need to be. It's not just like a tick. Oh, there's one, kind of black role model here.
Yeah.
There's one autistic role model there. It's
Yeah.
so much more complex than that, which is why these stories and people like you writing books about it. And what I love at the moment is we have no excuse. Like we have access to so much information in different formats. You can follow
Yeah.
people on social media, you can read books, you can listen to podcasts, you can read blogs. There's so many different watch documentaries. So
Yeah.
but we just need more of that, and we need more of the intersectional lens when people are pulling all of that together.
Yeah.
So yeah. But I wanted to go back to you touched on very briefly your
Yeah.
17-year career in the corporate
Yeah.
world, which is
Yeah.
obviously a huge chunk of your life. And you sort of touched on things like looking around and maybe seeing people doing tasks seemingly more
Yeah.
easily than you, and kind of. But what can you share a little bit more about your experience and how you think being black, a woman, and neurodivergent played into that?
Yeah. Being I felt in the workplace, again in that office that I was in, there was only myself as another black person in that within that team. So for me, it was really difficult. And then I had all the hidden challenges going on. So that was a big thing. I was I'm black. I'm a mother from a different country. So I had all of that going on. So I do think that, and the way things were going, and I had feelings of inequality as well because I'd applied for progression 4 times and I didn't get anywhere. I didn't get promoted at all. And one of the biggest reason why I didn't get promoted is the exclusion of people who are neurodiverse because I had a hidden disability. They didn't know that I had that. But however, the recruitment process was against me because I didn't understand certain things like doing a test after the interview. That really threw me because I don't like maths, anything to do with maths or anything
Yeah,
like that. And there are massive barriers that I encountered there. And also in the workplace of my workload as well, I felt like I was struggling so much at times. They had me on special measures and everything else going on, but they weren't looking deeper to see what the real issue was. And that was devastating for me. So in the end, the struggle, and whilst it was a great job, the struggle was real in that workplace. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it it's so hard to do well in a job when you don't understand yourself and you haven't got people like supporting you to try and do that. Um, and like you said, there's so many biases in our our standard recruitment processes, a total lack of understanding about the impact it can have on people. And like you said about promotion, that like look at what you've done now and the fact that you couldn't get promoted when you tried a few times in the workplace. And I hear that story from so many people. And I know somebody who has worked in the same job. So very similar story actually, but I don't know what the similarities in role. But she'd worked in the same role for like 15 years and she was doing really well. She was dyslexic, and she was told frequently to like go for promotion by her manager and then the head of the department. They kept saying, you know, you're performing at, you're doing that job basically and not getting paid for it. And she said, well, I can't because I can't interview. Like I just can't do it. And they were like, you'll be fine, you know, don't worry, we'll go really easy on you. We'll, you know, and she was like, oh, you don't understand it. I can't. It's not like I need some accommodations. It's just like I will not perform well in an interview. And so she didn't for ages. And then eventually they convinced her to apply. So she did. And then they gave the job to somebody else because she didn't interview well. And you just think, but you've seen me do it. You've seen me do it, but we are working it within these archaic systems where no one is challenging what the norm is. So it's so frustrating. Oh, I think you've muted yourself, Keisha.
Yeah, that wasn't the same with myself. The jobs that I was going for, I was doing the job, so I know how to do the job. That's not the case, but going through it's such, and I think this really needs to change within the work environment. These interviews and having four people sat around the table grilling you, it's just not the way. And companies that don't give out questions in advance before the interview, because I don't see, and I think that they're really missing out on some amazing talents just because of their processes. And if their processes don't change, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, because all the talents and people that they would really, really be beneficial for the organization, they're going to miss out on.
It's so true. And I think, any organizations that do adopt this more kind of forward-looking outlook and actually try to make change will leave the other organizations behind, because you're completely right. There's, I talked about previously about failing a numerical reasoning psychometric test once years and years ago. And I have a master's degree and I've since worked as head of data, but the test just wasn't working for me, and so I wasn't able to show that what I could do. So yeah, it's crazy. You've muted again. I don't know if you did it on purpose, but I don't know what you keep fiddling with. You're like, I'm done. Stop talking, Jess. So when we were kind of preparing and catching up in advance of this, you talked very briefly about the sort of angry black woman stereotype that exists, and then also kind of what that can do for people. So what's been your experience? Do you think that's played into it again for you, both in the corporate world and
Yeah.
potentially in academia, or when you're trying to create change?
It's a lot of it. It does pop up all the time, because I was always conscious in the workplace, because I'm the one that seems to be so different, conscious of what I take to the office as food. My hairstyle as well was a thing where I would back then when I was going through, getting pregnant. So I was pregnant and all that. So I'd give my hair a rest. So I'd wear wigs, short wigs, stylish short wigs at the time. And there was always I'd come in the office on the Monday morning, and there'd be like a swarm around my desk, and I'd get questions like, "Oh, is that your real hair? And you don't touch people's hair. You just
Yeah.
don't. You don't. That's someone's personal space." And it happened the other day as well. I was at an event actually, and someone did that, and it really triggered me.
Wow.
In a big way. Yeah, it triggered me in a massive way, because it's just not. It's not okay. It's not okay.
No.
It's not okay to criticize people's and hairstyle and thinking and asking them, is that the real hair, and all of those things. So quite a lot of that played out for me within the workplace that I saw. And the thing is, I thought at many occasions as well, there was like little cliques that were created in the office and in the environment, where there's a little group there and there's a little group there, and you feel like you're the only one that's left out because you're not in that clique with them. So that was difficult. And then you'd find out that people would go out, they'd invite everyone to night outs, and you were not invited. And you just think that all of these little things really affect you in a big way. But the one about the touching of hair is very, very significant, because not because my hair is curly or it looks, it doesn't give anyone the right to come and touch it and feel it.
Absolutely
and whatever.
not. I would just never experience that as a white woman. I would never. I've got curly hair. Like, I just wouldn't. It wouldn't even cross people's minds to come and touch my hair or ask me if my hair's real. Like, it just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
those are the things that,
Um,
yeah, it's just, it's so
and
much, yes.
I think when you talk about some of this, not you, when one talks about this stuff, so many people can think, oh, it used to be like that, but it's changing now. But it's not. Like the fact that it might be getting slowly better, but the fact that you said this happened to you very recently, like it's still going on for people all the time.
Yeah, I was at an event, very recent. It happened, they didn't trust, it wasn't my hair that I touched, it was my friend that I was with, and she was comparing her hair to my friend's hair. And then, because she had, kind of like long dreadlocks in her hair, going down. So I think she might have think that, oh, we both have the same hairstyle, but it's not. It's different because my friend's
Yeah.
hair goes through a process. Black people's hair goes through a process of doing that. You can't just, yeah. Long story anyway. And then she kind of went and just touched her hair, and my friend was like, and I was like, did I just see that she touched your hair? And my friend was really upset, and I got really triggered about it because it's one of those things that has happened to me in the past, and for it to be still happening, I'm thinking, why do you need to do that? That's like personal assault in a way.
It is. It's just, yeah. There's just no respect to somebody's like privacy and their own space, and it's just not. It's not something that we should be doing. And like I said, it's if I would just encourage anyone, if you ever find yourself in that situation where you feel like that's what you're going to do, just think, would I be doing this if this was if this was a white woman or a
Exactly.
white man?
Yeah.
Like, would I be doing this if this was a white person?
It would be.
Anyway, it's been so lovely to chat. Final question from me. Where can people find out more about you and your work and your book?
Okay, my book is available through my website. So if people connect with me on LinkedIn, there's a link on my LinkedIn that take you straight to my website. I don't really promote my book through Amazon because of the returns that I get on my book. I spent a lot of long sweat, tears, crying, everything that's went into my book. So I'm not in the remit right now to be giving away my book. So yeah, they can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm on Instagram as well, Keisha Adair Swaby. And if they can't find me, they can also go through to you, Jess, and they will find me that way.
Yes. You should be as determined as Keisha is to find out more about her. So thank you so much. Oh, I've really enjoyed it. It's been an absolute pleasure, and hope to have you back maybe for a future episode to chat more.
Thanks, Jess. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed it. Bye, guys.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And for more information about the work that Differing Minds do, please check out our website, www.differingminds.co.uk.